This is Eitan Weinstein.
And I'm Naor Menninger, and you're listening to Two Nice Jewish Boys.
This podcast is sponsored by The Forward. Stay up to date with unlimited access to news, culture, and opinion all through a Jewish lens. And for our listeners, for 2NJB listeners, get 6 months of The Forward for only $10. That's 67% off. An exclusive subscription offer for our listeners, forward.com/2NJB, and get 6 months for $10. Also in collaboration with Arutz Sheva, IsraelNationalNews.com. And last but not least, in collaboration with Australian Jewish News, check them out at ajn.timesofisrael.com. Back in November 2019, when the world was still a relatively normal place, and our biggest concern was which ice cream taste we should get on our midnight-munch-Wolt-Delivery. Yes, Wolt delivers ice cream in Tel Aviv. Anyway, last year, we had the distinct pleasure of having Yoram Sheftel on our podcast. Sheftel was one of the central characters, and what a character, of Netflix's hit documentary series, The Devil Next Door, which depicted the incredible story of John Ivan Demjanjuk. Demjanjuk was a Ukrainian-American who was charged back in 1989 in Israel of being Ivan the Terrible, a sadist and cruel guard of Sobibor camp during the Holocaust. The show was a phenomenal success and was one of the pioneering Israeli TV documentary shows to be showcased on Netflix. If you haven't heard our episode with Sheftel, then once you're done with this one, go check it out. It's a must, episode 167. Today, we're joined by Yossi Bloch. Yossi is one of the busiest and most successful documentary filmmakers working in Israel currently. He co-created The Devil Next Door with Daniel Sivan, and coincidentally, he's a fan of our show. So, without further ado, Yossi Bloch, thank you so much for joining us. How are
Hello.
you?
Thank you for having me. Hi.
So, how the hell did you get to Demjanjuk and Sheftel?
I was always interested in that, and there's a few reasons. I'm second generation. My mom grew up in Warsaw Ghetto, and when when Demjanjuk was extradited, I just came back from 6 months as an exchange student in Montana, of all places, and we went through Cleveland on the way back, and I remembered a really nice town with like so mellow and green and beautiful, and just on the lake. And then they said, I think it was 6-7 months later, they said, okay, they found the biggest Nazi ever living in Cleveland. And I was going like, why would he live in Cleveland? You know, why would you look for a Nazi in Cleveland? What's wrong with you? You know, go look in Berlin.
I think the question is the answer.
Yeah, definitely. And then when the thing started, I kept on looking. Like I was engulfed by it. When I went to the States to edit the show, my brother, I have a younger brother. I was 86. I was 18, almost 18 when he was extradited, and I went to the trial, and I saw it on television all the time. And then my brother is 6 years younger than me. And when I went to see him, he said, I told him I'm gonna, like when we were just negotiating, I told him I'm negotiating a series about Demjanjuk, and he was like, oh man, that's the worst thing ever. I was 12 years old, coming back home from school every day, and you had these horrible stories on the television, and you wouldn't shut it down all day long.
Instead of cartoons, you got just like Holocaust survivors talking about horrific things. Yeah, that sucks.
And and what really interested me was Sheftel standing up and saying, this is who I am, this is my truth, and I'm not going to let you diminish it. I'm not going to let you below it. I'm going to go with my truth and fight it over. And because I was just like him, I was always an outsider, and everything I said, people used to say, why do you say that? it intrigued me to see this person saying, it's not that I'm not afraid to say it I grew up in a 1,000 people town. I'm not afraid to say it on live television in the only broadcast channel in Israel. I'm going to say it to the judges. And you got to understand, Sheftel, just like me, we grew up in a very revisionist house.
Right-wing,
Right-wing,
classic right-wing
yeah.
Israeli Jewish.
Shamgar and these guys are
Got nothing on you?
they were our heroes. Shamgar
okay.
was like he was in
The
jail.
judge. He's the judge.
Yeah, he was in jail because he was Etzel.
Yeah.
You know, to stand up in front of someone like that and tell him that what he says is bullshit, you need some character. So I was always intrigued by it, and it kept staying something that is not closed.
Mm-hmm.
The other reason that I found it really intriguing is because the thing about the Holocaust is that everything is black and white. You know, it's like there's good and bad. There's no mid-tones in the Holocaust. There's no good Nazis. Not in the Holocaust. There is, after the war, they rehabilitated themselves, but it's black and white. And with Demjanjuk, there was a fight over the narrative all the time. There was, I think people misplace their words when they say that it's a fight over facts. It's not a fight over facts. It's a fight over narrative, because facts is something that is known. You know the guy was here, the guy was there, he did this, he did that, that's it. But there was the fight is over the narrative, and you see it every day now with everything from, like the
political campaigns, snacks.
Not
Whatever.
necessarily in that order.
Yeah. No, really, everything. It's about getting the story.
It's about getting the story, and you saw it just now with the footballers and the girls, and I'm a fan.
Here in Israel, you got to explain it. Here in Israel, you had soccer players who were accused of sleeping with underage girls.
And people blame the victims. The girls. And it's like it's not just the facts, it's the narrative. Ooh, we're so just, we're so right. We didn't mean, we didn't think, we didn't.
No, they said we didn't know.
We didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a fight over the narrative, and I'm someone who's not interested in the narrative at all. I mean, I'm coming from a school that allows all narratives to be postmodernism. All narratives can live together. They can be right and they can be right, and it's fine by me. I really don't care, especially not as in my public persona as a director. I do not judge people, and I do not put one narrative over the other.
But facts do interest you?
Facts interests me the most, because what happens when you have a fight over the narrative is that people are changing the facts, and they're playing with the facts. I remember when it just started, and I was coming to Daniel every week and saying, look, there's a great story, another story, and this side says that the facts is like this, and this side says the facts is like this. And then we got to going to Russia. And they were fighting. I brought the material, and they were. He said this and he said that. And then one day I remember I was talking to one of the sides, and he was going, yeah, it was in the middle of the winter, and we went there, and there was no heating, and I was freezing cold. Then I talked to the other side, and he says, yeah, I remember it was July. It was very, very hot this day. And I was going like, whoa, you disagree on the fact, was it sunny or snowy? That's the
Did you find out who was lying?
I never look for it. I mean, my job is to bring you the story and to allow both sides to try to be convincing, and I pretend to say that you can decide which side is just, but I assume that my narrative or my agenda does get in the movie, but it does not cloud the movie. I do not bring one side and withhold the other side.
Yeah, so how do you do that? Because as you said, like narratives, it's all about narratives and colliding narratives. But in the end, you're the guy who's crafting the overarching narrative, right? You're making this, you're telling the story. So,
Making choices that affect what we know and what we eventually want.
So how do you...
Well, there's a few ways to answer this question. My photographer said that it was amazing because when we would go to Sheftel, I would believe everything he would say. When we would go to Nishnik, I would believe everything he would say.
You would be the worst judge.
Yeah, Tal
Luckily,
told me. I had a 6 hours conversation with Judge Tal that we talked about a lot of things. And one of the things was how can you send someone as a Jew? Because the other side of the answer is that it's really easy when you're Jewish because I don't need to judge. God is judging. I just need to bring the facts, you know?
Worst case, I make a mistake, sentence him to death. He goes up to heaven and has a lifetime next to God.
I don't send him to death. I do not judge. That's the thing about being Jewish.
I'm saying if you're a judge.
That's the thing. I was sitting with Tal and I was trying to understand how could he do that? And you can see it in the movie, I think, that he says that it was the worst day. He didn't eat. He was fasting all day long on that day. And he said it was the worst day of his life.
This is one of the Supreme Court justices?
Yeah, Judge Tal. And we... So... Sorry, I lost my...
So how do you keep yourself out of the narrative? I mean, you said you go, you talk to these people, you believe every side, but in the end, I mean, you do end up, conveying one side probably better than the other.
No, I don't think so. Because first of all, you got to understand that while most or a big part of making the movie is collecting the stories, the material. And while you do that, I totally believe the side I'm with at that point. I do not lie. I try not to lie, or I don't lie too much to them. The Nishnik family knew all the time that I will bring the other side. Sheftel knew that I will bring the other side. I never said, look, I'm just bringing your story and that's it. But I was going with their story and I truly believed their story. And when I'm with the other side, I truly believed their story and I truly believed their side. And then when you make the movie or when you edit the movie, there's just so many people inside. You have the producers and the editors and the editor's assist and my wife and Daniel's wife and the commissioner, like the Netflix people, and everyone is and we had on this movie we had the Wiesenthal people foundation were involved daily. I was talking to Rabbi Avi Weiss more than once. I was talking to Lawrence Douglas all the time, historians, Tzvi Bendor Banit. He's not in the movie, but he was the soundman in the trial, and he's head of NYU, head of history in NYU department. And I heard all these people, and they all had a saying about this thing, but we all tried all the time. We were talking about trying to be as little judgmental as we can. So if you look at the movie, the part where Sheftel speaks, no one denies what he speaks. We never took out we didn't ridicule him, or we gave him the stage. And when the other side speaks, we gave them the stage. And you as an audience, I truly believe that the audience is smart enough to decide what's right and what's wrong. And you don't need to be an historian, and don't need to be a judge. Mm-hmm. I looked at Twitter, and there were 15-year-old kids in all over the world that were writing things that I was like, "Wow, man! I never thought that."
Theories and
just feelings.
What's the craziest theory you read?
Well, the craziest thing that happened was there was this guy in the University of Bombay, that tweeted that it's terrible what Sheftel did to the survivors. And then this guy from Pakistan answers him, and they're like 19 to 21-year-old. The guy from Pakistan answers him, you completely misunderstood the story. The story is that the Israeli prosecution team, what the Israeli prosecution team did to Demjanjuk. And they start arguing. And there's like 50 on this side and 50 on that side, and they're having a fight in Twitter, and I'm going like, whoa, man, it's like, why would you be interested in this?
You almost broke out the next Indian-Pakistani war over
No, that's the
Demjanjuk.
thing. They were so friendly and so nice about it, and they were speaking. That's what I like about the newer generation. They do not go and shoot each other and do things my generation did. They were so polite about the argument, and they said really tough things. I mean, you're talking about Treblinka, and it's not. I mean, and the person, Demjanjuk was a living person that, if you're his fan, you're thinking about what happened to him, and it's devastating. It's an atrocity, like Sheftel said. Yeah, that was really, really interesting.
But when you start this project, wouldn't you have a goal, like a dream goal of revealing this kind of a piece of evidence that would
Completely
uncloud
change it,
everything? And
So I will lie and say, no, I was like, I just wanted the story to unfold
it's
in
not
front
Jewish
of
of
my
you to lie.
eyes.
It's very un-Jewish.
Everyone who touches this story, why this story is so intriguing? Because the layer you see, just looking for 2 minutes, Google it, and you see a layer that is intriguing, but you understand that you haven't revealed all the facts. And then you start going in, the obvious aspect is going into Sheftel's book, and you read the book, and you understand that, wow, there are so many facts here. But hey, let's look, maybe there's a few more facts. And then you go to Beta Riela and you take all the newspapers, 7 years of newspapers, again and again and again. And wow, there are so many facts. And then I go to Michael Shaked, the prosecutor, and he goes, yeah, I have this thing here, this box full of stuff. You want to take it? Yeah, I'll look into it. Why not? And there's so many more facts there. And then you go to Sheftel. Whoa, look at the facts I found with... And he goes, oh, yeah, I got a 2,000 pages summary. Okay, he's got 2,000 pages summary. And you take that and you read that. And the thing is that you keep looking at more and more and more facts because you're sure that at a certain point you will find the truth. You will find the absolute proof he was in Treblinka, or he was never there, it was someone else. And it eludes you all the time. You keep saying, wow, I just need one. I remember saying to Daniel and my wife, I need another week or two. Maybe I'll go to Russia and open the files. And then Mickey Shaked tells me, no, here, the files are here. All the files from Russia are here. Sit and read them. And you sit and read them, and you're sure that I'll find another story, and it keeps on. Nothing. Nothing. You never find it. But every one of us, and me, Tom Teichholz, Lawrence Douglas, I think even Rashke, is living with this dream of finding this golden evidence that will put him in Treblinka, not as Ivan the Terrible. By the way, I have a story that is kind of a scoop if you want, that puts him in Treblinka. I can tell it to you later on.
No.
But to follow up, remember to ask him about the scoop. But to follow up on that, okay, Demjanjuk was trialed because of a law that was legislated, I think, in 49 or something like that, or 50. The law of persecution against Nazis and their aides. And that law it's a law a unique law internationally. It's one of the only laws in the world to have no territory, and it's timeless, and you can send someone to death based on nothing but testimony. So the question is, how can you judge someone and at all today according to testimonies or back then? The whole trial based the whole persecution of Nazis and their aides based on mainly on witnesses. As you say, people remember different things. You reminded me of Waltz with Bashir, where he talks about how memory is like it's fluid.
Do you purposely walk into the field mind, or?
That's
Okay. First of all, the law. I never read the law. Now that I think of it, but I have enough.
You read all those documents, and
I never read the law. I know like chapter 15 to it. I know by heart because it was in the trial. But I talked to the prosecution enough. At least the Israeli prosecution has never based anything on just eyewitnesses. It's always followed by documents. The problem with Demjanjuk was that the documents put him in Sobibor, while everyone said he was in Treblinka. And as for the law, I think I understood it after talking to Eli Rosenbaum. I asked Eli Rosenbaum at a certain point, was it that emotional for you because you're Jewish? Eli Rosenbaum is the person who led the OSI, the unit in the DOJ in the States that caught Nazis. I think they had investigations against 700 Nazis or something like that that infiltrated. They would do more if they could, if they would have evidence.
So you asked him?
I asked him because he was very emotional on this case and on all cases, and he was very emotional when he speaks about the survivors. And I asked him, are you emotional? Why are you emotional? Because you're Jewish. And he said, I used to think that, and then after this whole thing finished and I do what I do today, I can tell you that taking someone to trial for raping a 12-year-old Colombian girl is exactly like taking someone to trial for raping a 12-year-old Jewish girl. And I can tell you about this law. If someone decides tomorrow in France or in Zimbabwe to take to trial all the people that are doing atrocities in Syria, in Homs, and I'm sure we don't talk about it, but in the middle of Corona, 800,000 people, which means at least 400,000 kids, left Homs by foot to Turkey because they were afraid for their lives.
Didn't hear about it even.
Nobody hears about it. If someone takes the people who did that to trial, I'm with them. And I'll give them jurisdiction even if they do it on the Caribbeans. It's fair enough. If someone is doing such an atrocity against people...
But vengeance and justice is not always the same.
But the question is it that person, right? Because this was a question of identity.
That's a different thing.
This was a question of identity, right?
Yes, but he was asking about the law, about taking these people to trial. I think that... Okay. For me, you're talking about eyewitnesses and it relates to the Indians and the Pakistanis, because I was asking why are there, what's their interest, and I was talking to Tzvi Ben-Dor Banit, and he told me something that I never thought of. The Holocaust is the foundation of liberal modern Western society. This is what this is.
The core.
the core, אירוע מכונן, we say in Hebrew.
Catalyst.
This is sort of the catalyst for everything. I mean, no one through history ever said, no, you shouldn't kill civilians during war. It all started because of that, because of the way it was done, because of the gravity of that. This is why someone in Iran that has nothing to do with Israelis or Jews denies the Holocaust when he becomes the president, because he wants to attack capitalism and liberalism and modernism as a whole. And what's the best way to do it? Just go and say, oh, your founding incident did not happen. It's a lie. So why would you be so liberal? And it's not Hillary or Trump. Trump is as liberal. When it comes to this, Trump is more liberal than Rafsanjani. You know, when you put him with Rafsanjani, Trump is a liberal just like Hillary and all these guys. So when you look at this story of the boogeyman of the Holocaust, the guy, think of it, they had nicknames for everyone. There was the doll, that's the head of the camp, a guy who was convicted for killing with his hand 173 people. He was called the doll, the puppet. There was the Americaner, there was the postman, they had nicknames for everyone.
Who's they?
The survivors, because they didn't know their names, so they had nicknames for all of them, and he's the only one who gets the nickname Ivan the Terrible. That's the boogeyman of the Holocaust. That's the worst person ever lived on Earth. Okay? Of course you want to take him to trial.
No, yeah, of course. But the question is, how can you bring justice when the facts are so far away and all you have basically is witnesses?
It's
very hard.
It's not him, yeah. And they had a proof he was in Sobibor, and the prosecution went with it, and they say they proved it. In the Supreme Court decision, they say he was a Wachman, he was in Sobibor, but he wasn't Ivan the Terrible. We know he wasn't Ivan the Terrible because someone else was Ivan the Terrible. I'm not rooting for this trial, and I think, and I will not judge this trial, and I do not know if I would need to take the decision if I would say, yeah, bring him on. But, and I do not know if they should have seen it before, because what happened was that when the survivors came to the States and they give their testimony in front of Judge Battisti, their testimony was so strong that he said, I've had enough, this guy's going to Israel. And he sent him over Treblinka, over Ivan the Terrible, which we end up finding that he wasn't. So I do not have a judgment about this trial. But when you talk about Ivan the Terrible, even Demjanjuk would tell you, if you find Ivan the Terrible, he would kill him himself with his own bare hands. And I don't think he was...
So first of all, you said you had a scoop. You said that it puts Demjanjuk in Treblinka?
Well, everyone is trying to put him in Treblinka, because what happens is this 9 guys are saying, yes, we know him, we saw him, he was in Treblinka. We assume it was a lapse of memory and they influenced each other, but something is really hard for you as an historian to understand, because they all went for the same picture. Now, Sheftel is saying that it was a bigger picture and he was the only bald person there. And I took the picture slate And I really loved it. I used to show it to people and say, show me who killed Arlozov, show me who killed Kennedy. And they will all go to Demjanjuk, you know? It's true what Sheftel says, that it's easier for you to go to this person first. But
How come?
because the picture is bigger.
Okay.
The picture is bigger and
It was misleading.
yeah, the picture is misleading. But to have all of them look at the same picture and point to the same picture is really, really weird. And what everyone is trying to prove, on not Demjanjuk's part, is that he was there on a different facility, you know? And then they remembered him from there, but they misplaced him as Ivan the Terrible because his name is Ivan.
So he's saying he wasn't Ivan the Terrible, but he was a guard
In Treblinka.
Treblinka.
Yeah. And we know he wasn't Ivan the Terrible because Ivan the Terrible was Ivan Marchenko.
Or was he?
Yeah. No, we know that, you know, I read the files. It's true that they didn't all identify him as in the same manner, but his second in place said he was like the guy Shelaev who was with him identified him from a picture and said he was Ivan the Terrible.
But the famous picture of the bald guy, that was Demjanjuk, or no? That was
The picture that we see?
Yes.
one-
Yeah,
Where
but he's
you
not
have-
bald there. It just his hair is
Right.
cut.
But that is because there was a thing. I watched the movie a year ago. So it's
At the
vague.
beginning, he said it wasn't his picture.
Some say that they glued it on different files. They played with the photo.
Yeah.
But the photo is of Ivan the Terrible, right?
Yeah.
And it does look
No, the photo is Ivan Demjanjuk.
Demjanjuk.
But it doesn't say this photo was not on a document of Ivan the Terrible. The
It
photo
wasn't.
No, the photo was on a document that puts Demjanjuk in Sobibor and Majdanek.
Mm-hmm.
And what he claims is that it was his nephew. Or later on they claimed it was his nephew.
So we know.
There's-
Yeah.
There's so many details that, like, you're mentioning, for example, that they claim it was his nephew. I don't think that was in the series.
No.
And there's so many details and so many facts, like you said, the 2,000-page summary and a box full of documents and this and that in a book. And you obviously can't put them all into the documentary. And the ones that, I mean, you know, everybody knows that the stories you tell, right? It's not just about whether the stories in the news are accurate, but it's which stories are in the news. So it's like, which facts do you tell tells a different story.
Definitely.
So how did you go about picking and saying, okay, this is important and this is not important? And
We did leave important stuff out because it wasn't emotional, it wasn't cinematography,
cinematic, yeah.
cinematic. We did leave. We left Elizabeth Loftus, which, if you read her, she's the most important memory researcher probably in the world today, and she's the one who convinced the judge convinced the jury to let Ted Bundy off, and then the judge wouldn't. The judge
Disregard.
Dismissed her testimony?
dismissed the trial.
Ah.
The first trial of Ted Bundy, he was released. The one in Seattle. He
Wow.
was, he was. He wasn't convicted, and the judge threw it away, and then he ran away and did all the killing and stuff like that. But
So why did you leave that out?
because the interview wasn't emotional and it didn't work on a cinematic level. It just, we tried to put it in all, like the three first episodes, we tried to integrate it. It just didn't work. And that's the thing, there's so many people working on a movie, and it's not at that point, especially when it's a Hollywood, it's not your movie. Oh, I must have Elizabeth Loftus in. Look, guys, we must have Elizabeth Loftus in, and they put it in, and it doesn't work. You know, it doesn't look good.
Sheftel is a pretty hated man in Israel. Originally because of that whole story, but today he's a very avid right-wing radio host who says lots of things that piss off lots of people. So I wonder if that was a challenge for you.
So I'll have the disclaimer is, I think you know, Sheftel is a friend of mine, and he's a good friend of mine. And when this thing came out, there was, before people knew what's in it, there was a lot of hatred towards me. And he was one of the only people that were there backing me and holding me. And I really love him. I truly, truly love him. What he did for my series is amazing. So that's another... But I'll tell you first...
Also, you made him an international star.
Okay, so if you listen to what Sheftel says, and not on my series, listen to what, except the sentence that everyone hates. Some were senile, some were liars. If you listen to what he says on the radio, where he speaks terribly, but just take it, write down his arguments, and you see that he's not...
No, it's cohesive arguments.
You're saying it's the pathos with which he says it?
Yeah, he says it in a way that will make you hate him, because when he's hated, a lot of people listen to him. When someone like me hates him, or someone like my people hates him, someone from the left wing hates him, the right wing people automatically love him, and he knows that and he uses that. But and he loves it to his benefit. You know, Eyal Meged is one of his friends, told me that he would speak like that on 4th grade. There was a communist girl, like her father was communist, they were on 4th grade, and he would tell her the communist, I don't remember.
Fascist, communist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one thing about Sheftel. And I can tell you that when one of the biggest problems here was that no one would want to have Sheftel as the main character of the series, and I knew from the beginning that he's the person to lead it. He's my character, and even today, I think I told you this story, but in Yad Vashem I give a lecture and people stand up and say, but how did you give stage to this person? And I at a certain point I got up and I said, forget about the fact that he's my friend. Didn't you learn from the series that you cannot judge if you don't have all the material? You do not know who Sheftel is. He doesn't allow people to talk about it, and I know it only of second hand. But the amount of help he gives to people that in need, and it's not just money, it's money and time and effort and emotion. He used to call me every morning. I used to get a phone call from Tal, his secretary, and she would talk to me when this thing I was really nervous when it was about to come out, and there were talks. Oh, you villainified the Israeli persecution, and he sold Israel to Netflix for a bunch of money and things like that, and I was scared at a certain point. Every morning I used to get a phone call from his secretary. She would talk to me, see how I am. Yoram wants to talk to you, and he would talk to me. And at a certain point, he told me, "Okay, bring out all the comments, everything they're writing about you, everything. Now read them. And then he said, now stop. Is there any fact in it?" And there was none. And that's the point where I said, okay, I'm okay with it. So judging Sheftel when you don't know him, come on.
But did that hurt the production?
No, on the contrary, the fact that people
He's
hate
a star.
him. We had to edit in the States. I don't think we could have done the series in this way, where he's the star if we would have done it in Israel. But
Well, you think you would have had trouble finding editors, like people who would agree?
yeah, they wouldn't go with me.
Really?
Yeah.
Not any good ones. You could get maybe some
No.
Student.
second year film student.
Even a film
Probably
student
not.
in Israel
Yeah.
wouldn't dare to do it because then they would expel him from film school. As we both know, we're both studied film in Tel Aviv University
It's
and suffered.
it's you know what? I wish this would be the problem. I think the problem is that this sentence. How can you give a stage to someone like that? I admit I'm problematic, but I come from the school of Brandes and Holmes, the judges in the States. Brandes, which is the street in Tel Aviv, and everyone goes to the street, and there's the Ramat HaShofet is on his name. He explained 70 pages in Abrams against State of New York. He explains why it's important to hear everyone and to give stage to everyone. And one of the main reasons, I think one of the prettiest reason that he gives is that if someone speaks bullshit, if someone says something that is really, really problematic, you will hear him and you will say, come on, this is not a valid argument. You don't want him to say it quietly at the back room of some, to Wilkes
Because
Booth.
you'll never know what he thinks.
No, because you don't know what he will do. He could be Wilkes Booth and he will go and kill Lincoln, or he could be whoever killed Kennedy, because they wouldn't let him speak. And when you hear these guys and they talk, you can tell them, hey guys, you went too far. This is something that you shouldn't say. And not letting...
We just had this discussion with our previous guest.
Yeah.
Eitan, you said that...
Yeah, no, I said that, one of her claims, it was around the protests in Jerusalem, and one of her claims was that, we are a safe space and we will accept any message so long as it does not contain, and that's a great start, racism, incitement. Also, the whole incitement thing is just like, because now everything's inciting violence. If you say you don't... if you say you don't agree with illegal immigration, it's like, well, if someone murders an immigrant tomorrow, it's your fault. So
yeah.
So
and Eitan said that. Just repeat the quote. You said like that you have to let race.
Because no, she said that we said we'll make you have to be able to accept also racism. It has to be more radical. And she said no. And then
that's a red line. Never.
That's a red line. And then I said, well, what if we say this? And then she said, well, we'll explain that it's... But you'll never have the opportunity to explain, as you just mentioned, if you don't allow the other person to talk. Even if they say despicable things, even if you say hateful things about Jews or blacks or whatever, you have to be able to say it.
To me, the scariest part, I always say that about Germans. That the scariest thing is that I will never know what the nice guy in front of me actually thinks.
Yeah.
Because he's too scared to say whatever.
That's easy. Just get a bottle of whiskey.
Yeah,
and you
so
will
they
know
say.
Exactly what they...
Yeah, but that's the problem with PC culture in countries like Germany, that entire populations think very bad things, but you will never know about it.
No.
So, and that leads to catastrophe. I think
it happens here as well, because you can either, like, when one side calls the other side fascist, it's exactly the same, and the other side does not speak anymore. He starts barking, and when the other side calls this side traitors, it's exactly the same. When someone calls me a traitor just because I voted for someone who's today in parliament with Bibi, or when, at a certain point, I figured out that no one is eligible for having my vote, and the only one I thought that was it was a few years back that seemed correct for me was Ayman Uda, and I voted for him. And I had friends talking so much trash at me. How can you vote for an Arab? But I think he should be in. I remember what he said, that no matter what happens, when they get to parliament, they're only going to take care
to government or to
no,
parliament?
to parliament. They're only going to take the committee that is in charge of roads and stuff like that. Infrastructure to help their people. And then I said, wow, someone like that, I want to give him my vote. I talked to my father, which was a member of Likud. He was like Arik Sharon. And he said, wow, that's really beautiful to do. You know, if that's your belief, go on with that. Obviously, he voted Bibi on the same elections because he thought, or even I think he voted Lieberman, or, you know, he thought that, it's like Holmes said, I think what you're saying is atrocious, but I will die to allow you saying that.
So you said two people, Brandeis and?
Holmes.
And Holmes, okay.
Yeah, they wrote Immediate Danger, the part in Abrams, which then later on became the biggest, like the main issue of speech rights and stuff like that in the States.
So what's your biggest regret with that documentary series?
Wow, Demjanjuk? No, I don't think.
No regrets.
Yeah, I'm not a nostalgic person.
I see. So you're already working on the next big thing.
And
Is Netflix involved?
No, not yet.
Okay, but you have an open channel with Netflix.
I don't know. I'm not. I don't know.
Are you not on the business side of things? Like, do you have someone who takes care of that for you?
Normally, and even if I do, I'm not interested.
So I'll rephrase the question. It helps that you have a movie on Netflix.
Yeah.
Helps a lot. Okay.
Yeah,
that's very cool.
That's just like it generally helps in life.
Yeah.
If you have a movie on Netflix.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to have.
Yeah. How did you get how did you get them involved?
Netflix?
Yeah, how did that happen?
My producer Daniel Sivan was pushing into it, and to be honest, what happened, we had quite nice funding here in Israel, and then we needed some more money, and then we tried to raise money from Europe, and we talked to Arte, and
Arte is the main channel in France, guys,
and Germany.
And Germany.
And one of the guys there, we were talking, and we were just talking about the story, because I sell the story, and the thing about Demjanjuk is you have so many narratives, and one of the most interesting narratives that came up in that was that it was very convenient to many people all around the world, and especially in Germany, to be able to catch the boogeyman of the Holocaust, and he's in Ukrainian, you know. 870,000 people died in Treblinka. There were Germans there, but in our movie, it's Ukrainian, and it was very convenient for the Germans. And the guy from Arte, which was German, said, no, this cannot be inside the movie. And we didn't even talk about it.
Because he didn't want it to look like it's nice for the Germans to have a Ukrainian as the main villain.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's my mind is a bagel right now.
And when we went home, and they said,
Jesus.
yeah, sure, we give you the money. We needed $70,000. They offered us, I think, 150 or 200,000 euros. And we were going home, and I was going to Daniel, wow, we got the money. That's it. We can finish the project.
But
he looked at me and he said, no way. There is no way I'm going to let you.
What was their condition? What did they want
to cut that narrative?
No, he said, I saw the way you reacted when he said this narrative cannot be in the movie. I'm not going to go through it when the movie is finished and you want this story in and he doesn't want this story in, and I'm going to have to fight between you guys. I don't care about this money. We will lose money over it, but we will never. So we had to go to the States.
No,
And,
it's the cameras. All good.
okay. We had to go to the States, and then that's how it
So
started.
it's good. Things ended up well.
Yeah.
But the day you got that call from Netflix.
Wow. I'll take the fifth. I'll take the fifth. There was a lot of whiskey and beer in it.
And
Nice.
other materials.
Yeah.
Nice.
Very cool.
Are you subscribed to Netflix?
Yeah, of course.
Is it free?
No.
You get like a free subscription?
No, there's one of the best. I can't remember her name. Like the first woman who like did a hit show on Netflix. It's
Yeah.
not a show. It's a stand-up comedian. I can't remember her name. And she has like 15 minutes where she talks about how her husband gives her grief about, why do we need to pay for them? You made so much money for these guys. Why? And now you never.
How many people watch the movie on Netflix?
We're not allowed to
You're not
say,
allowed.
but it's a lot of people.
How many countries? Can you tell? Like-
It's all over the world. It's 149 countries, I think, 29 languages.
Wow. That's good. 29 languages like subtitled.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, the power. And the thing is about Netflix, it's like just like podcasts. Even in 3 years, people in new countries that Netflix is expanding, right? So maybe in Iran or wherever, people will be suggested with that
Yeah,
movie.
I just
the
watched.
longevity.
I just watched In the Line of Fire with Clint Eastwood from 1992 last night. I swear to God, it was amazing. And so, like, it's just like this movie will live for decades.
I tell you what was really amazing for me, and that's the part where I was talking about where Sheftel was there for me. We wanted to do a campaign. And we were like, we're Israelis, we know everything best, and we were hassling them. And they said, there's no campaigns on Netflix. And then we had a
What do you mean by campaign? Just to explain the
newspapers and go on television, like news and stuff like that.
Like a PR campaign.
A PR campaign. And they go, okay, listen, there's 150 million subscribers to Netflix. That was then. Each subscription is about 3 people. That puts it into 500 million people are like, you put the movie on a server and 500 million people can watch it. That's A, you don't do a campaign, you don't do a PR. How can you? And B, it's like you're overwhelmed with the size of this thing. When our series came up on Yes, our previous series, I think 40,000 people saw it or something like that.
That was like a drop.
Yeah, and it's like...
It's a good exponential...
It's amazing. 500 million people can watch what you just
Amazing.
said. And that's for someone who, I told you, everyone was... Every time I said something, everyone was going like, why do you say that? Why would you say such a thing? And then... You know, all of a sudden, so many people. When they told us the amount of people who binged this series.
That's a great statistic. You can see how many people watch the series within like a 2, 3, 4 day span.
I think that's the most binged documentary ever, or something like that. Crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, a lot
Amazing. So before we go, just a bit, because you grew up, you told us before the recording, you grew up in Iran.
Yeah.
You have memories. I mean, you
Oh,
were
yeah,
what,
yeah.
8 years old?
Do you speak Farsi?
I used to. I don't speak anymore. I was there from 1.5 years till I was almost 8. My father was working for someone on the Israeli intelligence there.
Enough said.
There's the same guys, I think, that did Pollard and all this. It's known, it was even on NRG that he built Natanz and stuff like that. He did stuff for the...
Just to explain, Natanz is the atomic
nuclear
plant in Iran that we helped apparently build.
No. He was sort of on his own building the infrastructure there. and I'd assume bringing the information.
You did
to
air
the
quotes
Israelis.
there. People can see.
Yeah, but it was supposed to be like a constructor there, but he would bring the Israelis.
I see. So he was kind of like, I mean, you don't have to agree or disagree, but
Just
he was
blink
like
twice if it's true.
he was like informant sort of.
No,
Basically,
he
he
was.
wasn't
It
actually
was-
employed by the. He wasn't like a Mossad agent. He was an
No.
Iranian civilian citizen.
No,
who was
no, no,
working.
Israeli.
He was Israeli that
We
was
had
building
relations.
stuff in Iran. We had
okay,
relations
okay,
there.
okay.
We were living with him. He was working under, I think, a French company.
The
or
lines
something
between
like-
who's working for the intelligence and who's not working at the time, the lines were very vague. Like Milchan's story, for example,
Yeah.
that like what was he, producer or Mossad agent or who knows, right?
These guys were patriot. They grew up in the 40s, where they were living here in Tel Aviv, which was 100,000 people, small village, and they kept hearing the stories coming from Europe of what's happening to the Jews. Some of them lost families there and stuff like that, and they were hardcore patriotics. Him, Milchen, Topol, all this group of people.
Topol
And-
was a Mossad agent?
No, Topol was just his friend. But no. But when you look at Topol, when he's in the States, when he's working in Hollywood, he's an Israeli patriot. I don't think he
Yeah.
was ever intelligence or anything like that.
He did.
I don't know.
He did act in a James Bond movie.
Yeah.
So, Moonraker.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you remember from it was Tehran or
Tehran. It's first of all, it's a very, very pretty country. It's really beautiful. People are so nice, so nice. It's unbelievable.
How weird,
Yeah.
right? Because you think Iranian, you think someone that wants to kill me.
You know, when you sit, when you go for a chai, if you go alone for a chai in the bazaar, in the market in Tehran, the guy would put 2 glasses on the table because no one should feel alone. You know, they're very, very good people. They're beautiful people. Yeah, and it's a very educated and smart society. You know, it's very similar. I think it's very similar to Jewish. Like, you have to go study.
Yeah.
You have to go study.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you grew up in a village where your parents didn't know to read and write. Oh, you should go to university. I think all universities there are still free, even today.
Yeah.
It's just that instead of being either a doctor or a lawyer, you can be a doctor or a nuclear scientist.
or a hacker.
Or
Yeah.
hacker.
Yeah,
Or a hacker.
Actually, when you think about it, it's amazing that this random country, it's not, they have their knowledge in nuclear, but also in cyber, for example. They are very fierce adversaries to us, to America, to China. One of the best in the world. Like the minds they have there.
Well, historically, they've been
yeah.
you know, one of the greatest empires in the world.
And that's like one of their main assets in war.
Yeah.
And
even if you look, I mean, no one speaks about it, but if you look at the Germans build nuclear plants all over the world. They ran the nuclear plants in Japan and France till they shut them down. Only in Iran and Israel they built the nuclear plants and left. It's the only 2 countries where they didn't even need to, 6 years teaching. No, like 6 months, it's enough.
Right.
We've learned it. And that's one of the things my father told me, that to see how fast they caught what's going on there, it was amazing. It was frightening.
wow.
Yeah.
And so what's your most vivid memory from
Iran?
a story?
The richness. We were a few times. it's a vague memory because I was under 5 years old. But we were in the inner rooms of the Shah Palace.
Wow.
Yeah. At a certain time,
Your
I
father
was.
had connections.
Yeah, he was probably working for him.
Mm-hmm.
And guarded by him because he, yeah. But I remember sitting in a room with his son, with Mohammed Reza, his younger son, the one that lives today in LA, and I even had I got a necklace like a coin from that meeting. So. And a few times I saw the rich, like when you see the rich of Iran, where you go into a palace where all the faucets are 24 karat gold and
Bathroom.
yeah, and that's like
It's like a
that's
Trump
amazing.
tower,
It's like the Trump Tower.
basically. Yeah.
It's like I think I can't remember who said it. It's like how Marie Antoinette would live if she would be rich.
Wow. That's crazy.
Fascinating. Okay, so guys, The Devil Next Door on Netflix. If by any chance you didn't watch it yet, shame on you and go watch it ASAP.
I need to give you the scoop. I didn't finish.
Okay.
So one of my closest friends or interviewees was Michel Lassie, which
Mhm.
was the reporter that was with the family for the entire time here. She was very close to, I think, to Vera and to the daughter. And she always told me to search for Gita Sereni, which wrote the story of Treblinka. And the other thing that always interested me was one of the survivors that when she gave her testimony in the States, it was said that this is the reason why Battisti was convinced, why the judge there was convinced. She gave her testimony on the first trial, and she wouldn't give a testimony here. And I asked people, every interview I would finish with, do you know why she didn't give the testimony here? And I heard a lot of stories that she was afraid what she would be asked and stories that will come out and stuff like that. And then on the last time I've been to Cleveland, I asked Michelle to give me some, another small interview with a few sentences that I needed and some questions to ask. We finished the interview and I asked, so can you tell me why I don't say her name I don't want to say her name. Can you tell me why she didn't testify in Israel? Do you know? And she said, did you talk to Gita Sereni? And I said, no, Gita is dead. And she said, did you talk to her? I said, no, she's dead. Did you talk to Rosenberg? He's dead. Epstein, dead. She said, anyone alive? I said, no, they're all dead. No one. The last survivor of Treblinka died 6 months ago. And she goes back, she takes off her glasses and she goes like, so I'll tell you a story. When she gave the testimony, the second time they gave the testimony, she wouldn't testify here. And Michelle was standing with, one time in Jerusalem, Gita Sereni told a story that this woman told her about a Ukrainian soldier that fell in love with her. And he was trying to be with her all the time. And at a certain point he came and kissed her in front of everyone. And he would come and kiss her every day at 5 o'clock in front of the Germans and everyone. And what he did when he came and kissed her, he would bring food from the kitchen, and he would pass it in the mouth to her, and that's the reason why she survived. And then she heard this story and she asked Gita to ask this woman who was the soldier, and this woman got really annoyed and she said, tell Michelle that it's not her business and she shouldn't stick her nose into other people's stories and she shouldn't know about this story at all. And then I asked her, so why did you ask? And she said, because when they were in the State, she asked the head of the Jewish community there, why doesn't this woman give her testimony? And he said, I don't know, it's really weird. I asked her and she said that Demjanjuk saved her life. So maybe he was the guy who would kiss her, but that puts him in Treblinka. And that's the reason why they remembered it. I have no confirmation for this story. It's just gossip, but
Gives you something to think about.
it's a good story.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else we can plug before we go?
No, I think that's...
Cool.
Look out for the next Yossi Bloch documentary.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And before we go, we collaborate with
IsraelNationalNews.com, Arutz Sheva, check them out. IsraelNationalNews.com.
And last but not least, AJN.timesofisrael.com. That's the Australian Jewish news down in Australia.
And finally, we do this on our free time, guys. So if you want to help us out, go to 2njb.com/donate. Thank you so much,
Thanks.
Yossi. Been really
you.
super interesting.
Yeah, so much fun. Good luck.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.